It's noon. It's noon. Y'all know what that means. Let me check and see if we are fully functional while I give you guys a moment to come on in the room. I see myself. Okay, so we're good. As you come on in the room, say hello, say hello. I'm just going to give people a moment. This is my booze music, Christopher Larome. It'll come back to you. The work we put in comes back to us. All right. Now you all know I can't take but too much time. I like to start relatively on time. I know it takes a minute to get notifications, but if you were even a wee bit as excited as I am about this series that we're about to embark on, I know that you're here and I see some of you. Hey, hey, hey. So let's go ahead and jump into it because I have a lot that I want to cover. And first off, thank you guys for being here with me today. I'm Dawn Michelle. I am the founder of A New Dawn Soul Therapy. And as a soul therapist, I help helpers and healers heal from unresolved trauma so that they can truly begin to enjoy their life, avoid burnout, and empower their clients and their communities and their families with greater impact. Okay, so some of you who've been following me for a while, yes, I am the soul connection queen. So I used to say, my pitch used to be, I help people connect to their souls, right? I still do that, but I'm really narrowing in a little bit more on who it really is that I'm called to. And when I sat back and I thought about most of the clients that I've had over the last few years, they've all been helpers. They've been ministers, clinical social workers, therapists, nurses. They've been in the helping field. So that is really, really who I'm called to. And we're all really in the helping field if you think about it. But so that's me. And I'm really, really passionate about what I do. And one of the reasons that this series, we're going to be embarking on a series and it's titled The Spiritual Awakening. Spiritual awakening process. And it's going to be divided into four sections. So every Thursday for Soul Therapy Thursday at 12 noon, we're going to be right here doing this. And so the first part is called the ache, and I'm going to talk about the ache today. The second part is called the ask. The third part in the series is called the awakening. And then the final part in the series is called the affirmation. Okay. And as I lay this out for you, I'm going to be using my own spiritual awakening process. Let me tell y'all, I've been a little anxious about doing this because, in a sense, this is what I'm calling my coming out story. Because I haven't publicly declared some of the ways that my belief systems have shifted over time. And because some of you have been following me for a little bit, I owe it to you to let you know where I am so that you can figure out if this is still a space for you, or if it doesn't align enough with your current belief system. You may probably need to get through this series to make that decision, or maybe not. I know that I am like a magnet. I always have been, but now I'm intentionally so. And I'm attracting those who need me and those that I know I can help. So Okay, so we're gonna get into it. So I've told you a little bit about who I am and what I do. Feel free to visit my website, anewdawnsoul.com. I have courses on there. I have free and paid content on there. My two courses that I'm highlighting right now are my Soul Connections course, where I take you through step by step how to connect to your soul and help you to understand why that's so important. And then the other course I have is called Managing Your Anxiety. Listen, and these days and times, out in these COVID streets, and with everything going on, anxiety is at an all time high. People who never struggled with issues of anxiety are coming to realize that it is sneaking up on them. So that is a great course to give you 5 strategies to manage your anxiety right now. Not in 3 months, not in 3 weeks, but right now. Um, so yeah, so check that out. If you're here, you're already part of my community because I believe I'm only streaming in the event and in my group, the Soul Therapy Circle for helpers and healers. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, again, as I'm going through this, if something I say resonates with you, drop it in the comments. Let me know that you're here. And then I'll probably go back. If I don't answer them as I'm going through, I always come back and answer questions or respond to comments. Okay, so spiritual awakening process. I'm going to tell you first what this is not. Then I'm going to tell you what it is, okay, what my intentions are. So, what this is not a session on religion bashing, okay? My purpose here is not to bash religion, and I will not bash religion. Okay. I will share some of my experiences and some of the experiences of my clients to help illustrate the points that I'm trying to make. I am not telling you what to believe. I'm not telling you what to believe. That's not the purpose. Okay. This is not a vent or a rant. I have my husband and I have some friends and I got my journal and I have my own connection with source to where I can let out what I need to let out. So that's not what this is about. This is not a chance for you to tell me what I should believe. So I'm going to make that very clear. One of the reasons why I've been so anxious about this is because I have received backlash from religious communities before, even while I was part of the religious community. And I'm just putting everybody on notice to let you know this ain't that. This is not an invitation for you to tell me what I should believe and what I should be doing, and nor is it what I am doing. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that I clear that up because inevitably somebody's gonna pop in my inbox, and that's okay. I'll deal with that, but I figured I'd let you know ahead of time. So what this is a discussion about the spiritual awakening process. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I believe that process is. It's a process of evolving in our belief systems, evolving. When we talk about spiritual awakening, it's about evolving, changing, growing. You hear all those things. That means it's an action forward type of process. And when we evolve in our belief systems, it begins to shift our current perspective of what it is that we say we believe in. It actually shifts everything, everything in our life. So really, in a general sense, that's what spiritual awakening is. And when you hear spiritual awakening, in my experience, I haven't heard it associated in religious context as much as more. Some people refer to it as New Age, and it's not New Age. Okay, spirituality predates the Bible. Okay, and so the process of spirituality, that energy force has always been here. So it's not something that's foo-foo. It's not something that's just for new age people. It's not that. We all, if we are intentional at all about this life, if we want to live it with any kind of purpose, we go through a spiritual awakening. Even if at the end of your spiritual awakening, you're like, I don't believe anything, you know, we all have some kind of spiritual awakening process, right? And so that's really what I believe spiritual awakening is. This session is going to use again my process, okay? In that, I'm going to give you an overview of what you can expect during a spiritual awakening process, and overall, this is just an invitation to come to a safe place. Like, this is a safe place where we can talk about things, where we don't have to worry about being bashed. We don't have to worry about being judged. And that's the community that I have cultivated here and that I'm going to continue to cultivate. This is a safe place to come when you have questions or when you want to bounce something off of a soul sister's back. Soulsters, hey. So that's what the purpose and the intent of this series is. So I hope I've done a good job in, relaying that to you, what it is and what it isn't. And I keep looking down because I have notes, because those of y'all, I will digress and then I'll be off on a tangent. I have you here all day. So I'm trying to keep track where I am with my notes. I want to say this to you too. I know that a lot of you, when you watch me, you take notes, and that's a great thing, because there's things that are going to come out. As I'm talking, take note of the areas, of the concepts, of the things that I say that resonate with you, that give you pause, that just kind of leave a lasting impression on you. Take notes, because the universe, God, spirit, source, your higher power may be trying to tell you something in that. Okay. So that's a key I wanted to give you. And this isn't a talk show where I'm just sharing the tea. Ooh, let me tell you about my spiritual process. Like, I'm not just sharing the tea. It's a sharing and a learning experience. And if any of you saw the post that I made earlier today, about the ache and about why we share our stories. We share our stories because it creates safe spaces for other people to do the same. We share our stories because it ushers in and it creates an atmosphere of healing. Okay. We don't just share our stories just because we have nothing better to do. We share our stories because we want somebody else to get free. The main reason why I'm doing this is because there was no one around to help me through it. I couldn't find really anybody. I mean, I ended up finding people that were, really 10 steps removed from me. And excuse me, and following them and just picking up pieces from this person and pieces from this person and pieces from this person. But I really wish that I had some kind of understanding, somebody to tell me that, Dawn, you ain't gonna die. This is part of the regular process. Okay. And that's why I'm doing this. So as we move through these 4 weeks, I already told you we're going to be talking about the ache, the ask, the awakening, and the affirmation. So let's get into the ache. You ever had an ache? An ache. So whether you ate too much Thanksgiving dinner and your belly aches, that feeling inside that's like, it's not always painful, it's uncomfortable, and it's just an ache. I stubbed my toe a couple days ago. That jammy hurt, and my little toe turned all purple and stuff. But it still aches all these days later, and it's letting me know that it had an injury. Okay, when something aches, it's bringing to our attention that we need to pay some attention. It needs some healing. It needs something. And so whenever we ache in a certain way or have an ache, it's like a red flag. Hey, come pay attention to me. And so when we're going through a spiritual awakening, that ache becomes louder and louder and louder. So for me, I had an encounter with Campus Crusade for Christ in 1994. After waking up in my sorority suite, after yet again another drunken night. And their timing was perfect because I just was crying out. No one really goes out and gets pissy drunk because they have nothing better to do. Okay. They're crying out for something. And so I encountered these people. I ended up following the process and I became a Christian on that day. And so fast forward, I graduate, I move to a city, and I immediately find a church because I had a friend that was part of that church. And he ended up leaving, the only person I knew in the entire city. He ended up leaving the church and I stayed. So that was really the beginning of my church journey. I am not one, I was not raised in church. We knew nothing about God. I think I went to church a couple of times with the just the awesome grandma of the block. You know, we would get our shawls and our shiny white shoes, and we would get a quarter. We'd go to the corner store, you know, we'd be in Bible study, we get to color stuff. So I do remember doing that a couple of times when I was younger. But my family of origin, at least my mom who was raising me, we knew nothing about it. Now, my father's side of the family, there were ministers, and I did go to church a couple times when I was kind of in relationship with them when I was younger and before my father went to jail and all that. So I say all that to say that my Christian experience as a young person was null and void. So everything that I've learned about Christianity has been in my adult years. And so and I did the thing. Okay. So I got to church and I ran all the ministry. I did all the things. I ended up being ordained. I went through studies for 3 years. It was real legit stuff. And so in 2009, I was ordained, but there was always this ache. There was always this void, and that is why many of us get to organized religions. And the reason I talk about Christianity is because that's my experience, that's my background. I don't talk about things that I don't know that much of, and so while I know that there are a plethora of other religions, I won't refer to them as much because they're just not my experience. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable. It doesn't mean that you can't have some of the same experiences in other religions as you do in Christianity. It just means that it's just my experience. Um, so that ache, many of us come to organized religions because of an ache, right? Because of we want to feel love. We want to belong. And let me tell you, that really is my story. As a mixed kid, it's been very, very difficult to find places where you belong. You're not white enough, you're not black enough, you might be Spanish, but we're not really sure, so we can't help you over here. So it's like I always struggled with that sense of belonging and acceptance. So this is part of my trauma background and part of my trauma story. And I clearly see how I got into Christianity. And that's what I did. And I went hard. Okay. I don't tend to do anything like half-heartedly. Um, I go hard. So, and that's what I did. Now, the ache only increased for me. It didn't decrease. And there were a lot of things that happened and unfolded in the course of my time in ministry. And what I'm not going to do is kind of go down bullet by bullet because that feels more like, oh, this is the tea. Just know I done been through some things. Okay. Just know. Just know, because that's what happens when hurt people crash into each other. When hurt people crash into each other in the midst of four walls, in the midst of a religion that places them above other people, it got ugly. And any of you who have experienced what people call church hurt, which I don't like that term because it diminishes the impact that you had if you were hurt in the church. It's just like, oh, you were hurt in the church. Well, it was you, not them. Just all of these things. So I don't like the term, but we know what we're talking about when we talk about church hurt. So been through all the things, right? So all the things. And I remember sitting there in 2009, in December of 2009, in the front pew, because that's where all of the orderly ministers sat, in the front of the church, the first two pews. You know, you wasn't important if you didn't sit in I know if you didn't sit in the first two pews. So I was sitting there and I had been going through a particularly hard time. I was just ordained 2 months before after going through a 3-year process and got myself into some situations with other hurt and broken people within the ministry. And it kept like coming to me. It was very heavy on me. And I remember sitting there one Sunday and the situation was literally kind of like blasted up on the screen. And I'm sitting there like, I really got to keep going through this. And I heard, felt, knew, Dawn, you don't have to endure this anymore. Because when you make a mistake, I had made a huge mistake and I had let the cat out of the bag. Like, okay, y'all, we're supposed to be ministers and Christians and stuff, and this is not what's right, and this was my role in it. I'm the one that kind of blew up the spot, so to speak. But then everybody didn't want to let it go, and then people were getting treated differently depending on what their role was in the church. Okay, and I was continuously called on to serve the person that I had been involved in some BS with. Okay, follow me. And I was being like re-traumatized every time we sat down and every time something was, up on the screen, endorsing this person, right? And when I heard you don't have to endure this anymore, it was like freedom. And I left. I had a meeting with my pastor and I said, I can't be here, right? I don't know if this is now, if it's, forever or whatever. So I left. And I've been on this journey for so many years, The most important part, the whole time dealing with the ache, right? So the ache led me make certain decisions that I did. The ache of wanting to be loved and wanting to be accepted. So that ache kept calling me. And so we have choices. When we have an ache, we seek to resolve the ache. Okay, we don't always resolve the ache or choose situations in which we resolve the ache in the way that serves our highest good or the highest good of others. Okay, so we get ourselves into some situations, but the ache remained. So just because I left the ministry didn't mean that I left my faith, right? So now here I am struggling to figure out, well, what does this mean? How do I be a Christian without no what? We're homeless, right? They say that you're a homeless Christian when you don't have a church home. But during that period of time, the thing that hurt me the worst was I had a ministry where I helped women who were sexually abused, and I hosted what was called faith fellowships. And I was still in relationship with some of the women at the church. And one of those women was very, very excited. And she would go and like, hey, Dawn's having another faith fellowship. Da, da. Well, the pastor called me and said, don't invite my people to your thing because I don't know who your covering is. I can't even describe how much that hurt me. Because confused. Well, Jesus was my, like, he's still here just because I'm not. It was awful. Oh, it hurt me so bad. And it confused me because I'm like, what does this even mean? And, church is full of saying things, but what does it really mean? And that's why I would get in trouble because I'm asking the questions. Okay, but what does that mean? How do I do that? And in an atmosphere, in a space where people just want to maintain the status quo and the hierarchy of systems. And I'm not talking about just this church, I'm talking about the religions in general, are very pinpointing, and we say things to appease one another, and we don't know the real meaning of things. So here I am out in the world all by myself. I had started dating my now husband then, and he was just very, very caring, who happened to be a deacon because he was a bishop's son. He was just very caring and really helped me through that. And I really, really appreciated that. Really, really appreciated that. So I found myself searching for what I had felt during a specific period of time during my walk. And it was in 2007. I had a few months there in the middle of the year where I felt so tuned in. You ever feel that before? Like, I felt so tuned in, so on fire. I felt like for the first time in my life, I knew who I was. And what I came to realize is that all those years later, this is actually a really recent revelation, very recent, that all these years, all the different churches I would visit, and we visited dozens of churches across 3 states. We would drive. That's how important it was to continue on this relationship with God in the manner that I had for these previous years. Unbeknownst to me, it was shifting. My relationship was shifting. And so that period of time in 2000, I felt, or 2007, when I felt so connected and so like myself, I was chasing that thing. So here we are again, the ache. I would go to another church and I'd just be sitting there like, where's it at? Where's it at? I went to all kinds of different churches, churches in the city, churches in the country, white churches, black churches, mixed, diverse churches. I went loud churches, quiet churches. I've gone to every type of church searching for it. That ache inside of me kept calling me, kept calling me. And I truly felt like I was homeless. I went through a huge depressive year. I'll never forget. It was 2012. I was battling an illness. We were living in Baltimore and trying to find some of the biggest churches on the East Coast we were part of. And it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So the ache was calling me. It kept calling me. And it wasn't until, oof, during this time, y'all, I had a foreclosure. I lost my house. I really thought that being connected like that, it was a safety net. I had a group of people that I could depend on. And as things happened and I couldn't depend on them, it was crushing because it reminded me of my background and my dysfunctional family. Again, here we are again. Dawn's on her own. Dawn's on her own. And quick note here, sometimes you have to be on your own. Can nobody do this work for you? Sometimes you have to be on your own and work it out. And that's exactly what was happening to me. So I got married in 2010. And I think I just said about 2012 was a very depressed year. Couldn't find a church. I still was like unplugged. I felt unplugged because I had been taught that to be plugged in, to be connected, you go to church and you have a church home, which means that you have a place where you are working your tail off. Let me tell you that very few people, maybe other than the pastor, worked harder than I did when I was in church. Always there. Half of the ministries named, I named them. I did the little church plan about them. And so it was a very lonely feeling trying to search and trying to find. And meanwhile, I'm falling and my health is getting bad and just things were just not good. And so fast forward to, let me take a sip. So the ache is still there. Fast forward to 2018. So a lot, we never did really find a church. We tried and we never did find a church home. In 2018, I ended up having a paralyzing panic attack on my living room floor. It was a very terrifying time. It was a rough day. I was still working at the partial hospitalization program as a mental health therapist. And I was doing that part-time. I was doing this work part-time, and I had just transitioned from my ministry, which was called Ali Mayu, to a new Dawn Soul Therapy. So I knew something was happening with me all that time, like just transitioning from a ministry mindset to something else. And because I hadn't seen it in my environment, it was so hard to figure it out. And I'm just now piecing it all together. And that's what happens when you do something new and you break the mold. Whoa. Okay. So the paralyzing panic attack, I couldn't move. I'm sitting on my living room floor. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I only like had my eyes, and my husband and my two kids were there, and everybody starts panicking. My son is like, something's wrong with mom. Something is wrong. So he goes immediately into his prayer. My son is a very, very devout Christian, and I respect him so much. And he respects me. Catch that. We have differing belief systems now, but we respect one another. So anyway, we're there, and the ambulance comes, takes me away, and I'm in the hospital, and they're running all the tests because they thought maybe it was my pseudotumor, and it wasn't. It was a nice, handsome, bouncing bundle of PTSD. So I was diagnosed officially with PTSD. Of course, I look back over my history and my life, and I can see, of course, I had PTSD. Of course, I did. Those of you who've been following me for a while know that I've shared bits and pieces of my story. Makes sense. And that the way my PTSD was manifesting is through anxiety, which led to this paralyzing panic attack. So that began the what the hell is going on? I've done my work. I did my work. I focused, I was intentional about healing from my sexual abuse and all of that, and what is going on? And I'm laying in that bed, and I'm like, and you call yourself a therapist? How in the world can a therapist therapize people when it was horrible wrapping my mind around all this. But that was the very thing that got my attention. That paralyzing panic attack was the thing that got my attention, because I knew I had been going through it all year. I lost my stepfather. I eulogized his funeral. It just was a lot. And I knew something was building up, but I had no idea. I had no idea. And the ache exploded. The ache. I wish y'all could see me pointing. The ache exploded. And I knew I had to dig deeper. I knew I had to do something different. Dawn, the therapist, had to go see a therapist. I never did that. I never did that. I thought because I knew with my mind what to do, that meant automatically that I could do it for myself, but I wasn't. I wasn't. I was telling women all over how to heal. I was teaching them how to heal. I was teaching them how to pay attention to themselves. It was more from a psychological and a spiritual sense, but it wasn't deep like I do now. That's where the soul comes in. It was more surface level. It was more of that, well, how I had been trained. Pray harder. Try to pray this way. You got to have more faith. And what is your faith? But never really teaching them how to do this thing, which is what I do now. So I had to dig in, and that's how I came up with soul therapy. But it all started with the ache. And so as I dug in a little further, so that was over 2.5 years ago, that I was like, well, I think I may be off in my belief systems here a little bit. I think that I need to look in a little bit deeper. And being at that point of desperation and brokenness was the change. That was the pivot. Y'all know I love the word pivot. That was the pivot for me. That was rock bottom for me. To be there hopeless in front of my family who depended on me for so much. I wasn't doing my work. I wasn't I wasn't doing the work necessary that I needed to do so that I can get to where I need to be, so that I can do stuff like this. And the same is probably for you. What's the work that you need to do? What do you need to do so that you can get to where you need to be, so that you can be in the position, and you're a helper and healer, right? So what do you need to do to get there? I reject any and all teachings that teach us that we have to self-sacrifice in order to help other people. That is damaging. That is so damaging. No, no more. I no longer serve from my cup. I serve from the overflow. So my number one priority is to make sure that my cup stays full for me. You have to make sure that your cup stays full for you first. I know that this flies in the face of everything that we've been taught, especially from a church or Christian culture, and also from the world's culture, right? The church is nothing but a microcosm of the world. If you think about it, it really is. It plays it out better than almost any other system that I can think of, from the stage to the audience to everything. Okay? What do you need to do to get to be where you need to be? It's not okay to sacrifice yourself. We fill from our own. If we make sure that our cup is full, then the overflow is where we serve from. That is life changing. That is life changing. So, okay, I'm digging. I went to therapy, and the therapist could take me so far. The most important thing that she taught me was how to actually sit in my feelings. Like, she would confront me right there as I'm having a feeling, because I was an expert at shutting them down. I wonder for how many of y'all that sounds familiar. I was an expert at shoving them and pushing down the feelings. And oh, my entire identity in existence was about what I did for other people. About what I did for other people. And even now, if I ask you, well, who are you? Most of you would say, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I do this and I do that. It's all about your labels and your titles. That's not who you are. That's not who I am. It's part of what I do. But when you spend a lifetime doing, excuse me, when you spend a lifetime doing instead of being, it gets out of whack. And your spiritual awakening puts this stuff in perspective for you. It gives you the pieces of the puzzle to put together. That's why you have to do your work. That's why faith without works is dead. Yes, I can still quote scriptures even though my belief system has changed. I kind of feel fortunate because I feel like I get to see the background of the scriptures instead of just regurgitating. And that's one of the things I don't like about it. Many people just simply regurgitate. Know what you know. You got to know what you believe. And that's why also so many people are so angry. Why are you sucking on lemons, boo? I don't get it. You're so angry and so defensive because you don't really know for certain what you believe and why you believe what you believe. Yeah, I said it. So that's what brought me to that floor. The constantly serving everybody and putting everybody first. The faking the funk like I was okay and I wasn't. Never allowing anybody else to help me because of the hurt that happened the last time I asked, right? But we got to stop letting fear get in the way, and fear halting our spiritual awakening process. It's a beautiful process. Okay, let me get back to the story real quick. Let me see what time I got. All right. I knew that this was going to be about an hour. All of them will be. So I'm doing the work. I'm seeing my therapist. I'm in retrospect, I can see that I am waking up, right? I'm evolving. I'm challenging some of my belief systems. And so by December, I come across this word called empath. And I had never heard of it before, but it described me to a T. I was like, oh my goodness, this sounds like me. And an empath is someone who can feel and sense and absorb energies, right? So I've come to believe that energy is spirit and spirit is energy, that they are the same thing with different words. It's just like water and agua, it's the same thing. Two different words, agua and water, different languages. It means the same thing, okay? And so I've come to believe that this is what religion is. Like religion has no, that's not good enough. You got to believe this. And I disagree. I disagree. And guess what? I get to disagree. I get to disagree. I can't. I'm trying not to get into too much about what I'm going to talk about next week, but I can't wait to tell y'all about that. So empath changed my life. And I'm like, so then I started studying the term as I do. Like I love to study. I learn all the time. I'm always reading something. I'm always looking into something. And so empath, wow, that's me. And that's what got me into studying more about energy. And then I started learning more about like chakra systems and really the I want to say geometrics, but I don't think that's the right term, see, because I'm still learning. And all of that just sat with me much better. It gave me more of an understanding to things that I had previously not been able to find an understanding for. And so, yeah, that really started. And from there, I started having questions, like real deal Holyfield questions. And that is what I'm going to talk about next week during the spiritual awakening, the Soul Therapy Thursday spiritual awakening, the ask. So I'm going to talk about the ask and what did I ask and what answers did I receive. And so as I wrap all this up, I want to bring it back again to that ache. For me, the inner aching that I came into this world with that led me to most of my life decisions. It led me to the church and to Christianity. It was the ache of not feeling like I was enough. I never felt like I was enough, ever, ever, until now. I never felt like I was enough. Never. I was told I wasn't enough when I came into this world. My grandfather, who is Italian, I never met him because he refused to meet me because I was Black. And my sister too. Not good enough. Every time I try to achieve something and I come home and I say, look what I did. Either I'm hit or I'm, yeah, whatever. You think you're better than other people. Like that was the story. That was the response I always got. Not enough. The other ache I had is I had no place to belong. I had no place to belong. When I say I wasn't white enough and I wasn't Black enough, that's real. That's real. My whole life. It may be a little different now in 2020, but I was born in 1973. That shit wasn't cool. It was not accepted to be mixed, and we still have issues with it. Okay? So I always struggled, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? Okay? A lot of us are drawn to church for that and to religion, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the other part of the ache was that I wanted to be seen, heard, loved, and accepted. All of that. Seen, heard, loved, and accepted. The things that my personal aches, I know some of y'all have them too, because some of them are universal. We all have a need to belong. We all have this deep, burning desire to belong. That's why we're all interconnected. We're all part of this same circle. We really are. We all want to be seen and heard and valued and loved and accepted. Nobody is like, oh, reject me, oh, reject me. Nobody does that. So these are universal needs. And so my spiritual awakening process, as it refers to the ache, took me out of Christianity and put me more into a universal mindset. And that space feels comfortable for me. That space feels good for me because even when I was Christian, I wasn't the one saying, you're going to go to hell if you don't do that. It never, ever sat right with me. I never did that. And so before I wrap this up, I want to say that my Christian journey was very much a part of my spiritual awakening. And for that, I am so eternally grateful. In that church is where I learned about me. In that church is where I tapped into some of my gifts. You know, I loved praying for people. And even the laying on of hands let me know that I have a gift of healing. We call it energy healing today. The gift of prophecy. I was given that gift, or it was pulled out of me. It has something to do with my ordination. But just because I'm not in the four walls of that organized religion doesn't mean that my gift was taken. I still have it. So I'm very grateful for my Christian journey. Every lesson, it let me, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was my authentic self for that small period of time. When I got to tap in and I got to pray for people and I got to share what this knowing that I had, which we call prophecy in the church. And so now it continues to feed me because that wasn't fake. That was the real deal. And so I'm grateful for my experience. And I'm also grateful that I had the ability to choose to evolve my consciousness. And that's where I am spiritually. So no matter what your spiritual awakening process is, and if you are a Christian and this is the way that you want to express your faith and spirituality, blessings to you. And just because we don't share the same exact tenet, guess what? All Christians don't believe the same thing. So y'all stop saying I can't follow him or her because they don't believe what I believe. You don't believe what you believe with the person sitting next to you in the pew. Y'all don't believe the same things. Your pastor, you don't believe everything that they believe, and that's okay. So I want to invite you that if that is you, I want to invite you to stay. I love my Christian sisters. I really do. And I hope that you guys will choose to stay. If this is not the space for you, I send you all the love and all of the light as you go to another space and you find what works for you. No love lost at all. It is okay. It is okay. But I know some of my other Christian sisters are going to, and that's what makes us soul sisters. We may not share the same belief system according to religion, but we share the same belief system here. So I hope that makes sense. And I want, what is your ache? So as you go through this next week until we come back together next week, I want you to think about what is your ache? What is your soul calling out for? What is a need that you're not getting filled? What does your experience and your expression of your spirituality, what is it calling to bring out from inside of you? What is your ache? If you feel comfortable, leave it in the comments. Send me a message. I know that this is sensitive stuff. I know it's a risk. That's why I called it coming out. Because even now today, people who have different sexual orientations still have to come out, and it's a very painful process for them. And I feel like I can relate to that this much in this process of saying, hey, hi world, I'm Dawn. This is what I believe. This is what I used to believe. This is what I believe now. And kind of bridging that gap. Okay. So all of you are not supposed to stay where you are. Your ache is calling you higher. It's calling you out. And I'm here to talk with you about it. Again, if you don't feel comfortable sharing it in the groups, I'm here. Send me a messenger, a messenger on Messenger, and we'll talk about it. Oh, that wasn't so bad. That, that wasn't so bad. I know I left some things out, but that's okay because we're going to be here for another 4 weeks. So, again, I will see you next week. Soul Therapy Thursday. Remember, we're at 12 noon instead of 7 p.m. now. It works better for me. Actually, the lighting is better, so hopefully this video will come out better too, since it gets dark at 5, actually closer to 4:30 now. And thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. You guys were quiet, but I knew that this would be that way. It's heavy stuff. It's heavy stuff. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it all. So I'll see you guys next week. It's Thursday. Have a great weekend. And I'm here if you need me.